what if James Harden's time with the Clippers is already over, and the league knows it before the fans do? That question is quietly spreading around the NBA as the trade deadline gets closer. Behind the scenes, there's growing buzz that teams believe the Clippers could be open to conversations involving Harden, not because they want to be, but because this season has forced their hand. The Clippers didn't just stumble, they collapsed into a situation where every loss hurts more than most teams, especially with their future draft pick sitting in someone else's hands. That pressure has turned Harden into something he wasn't supposed to be this season, a possible exit strategy. And here's the part that matters. Harden is still producing, the numbers look real, the impact is real, and that's exactly why teams are paying attention. At 36, this might be one of his last chances to compete for something meaningful as a central piece. And the league knows windows like that don't stay open long. Just weeks ago, reports claimed Harden had stepped up as the emotional leader of the locker room. Now, rumors suggest front offices are already expecting his name to show up in trade talks. That kind of shift doesn't happen by accident. The Clippers are stuck between chasing a thin play-in dream and protecting what little flexibility they have left. And if they hesitate too long, history suggests Harden won't. Because when situations start to unravel, someone always makes the first move. Rumors around the league are starting to feel less like noise and more like preparation. Multiple teams are quietly operating under the belief that James Harden could be in play before the trade deadline, even if the Clippers haven't openly signaled it yet. This isn't coming from fans or hot takes. It's front offices watching closely and reading the direction this season is heading. What's driving that belief is the way things have unraveled in Los Angeles. The Clippers aren't just losing games, they're losing leverage. Every night they slide further down the standings, the pressure grows, especially with their first-round pick sitting in someone else's hands. That reality changes how aggressive a team has to be, even if ownership still believes in the current core. Harden's name keeps surfacing because of timing. He's still producing at a level that commands attention, and teams around the league know his contract isn't impossible to move. Compared to other stars with massive deals, Harden's salary is workable, which opens the door for real conversations instead of just hypothetical ones. Just weeks ago, reports claimed Harden had taken over as the emotional leader of the locker room. Now, the narrative has shifted again, with speculation that teams expect his situation to reach a breaking point if the losses continue. That swing, from leader to trade chatter, highlights how fragile this season has become. And this is where it gets uncomfortable for the Clippers. Do they keep chasing a play-in spot that feels further away by the week, or do they accept that this window might already be closing? Because if they wait too long, the decision might be made for them. The Clippers didn't just stumble into a bad stretch, they backed themselves into a corner. This season was supposed to be about competing, but instead it's exposed how little margin for error this roster actually has. And with their future draft pick no longer under their control, every loss carries consequences that go far beyond the standings. That's what makes this situation so dangerous. The Clippers can't afford to be bad, yet they also can't easily get better. Aging stars, constant injuries, and limited flexibility have created a scenario where short-term hope is fighting against long-term reality, and the longer this drags on, the worse the options become. James Harden sits right in the middle of that tension. Keeping him means committing to a play-in chase that hasn't shown real signs of life. Moving him means admitting that this version of the Clippers might already be cooked. Neither path is comfortable, but one of them may be unavoidable. The pressure only grows when you look at how the rest of the league sees it. Teams are watching, waiting, and quietly positioning themselves just in case Los Angeles blinks first. That kind of attention doesn't happen unless front offices believe something has to give. So now the Clippers are faced with a brutal question. Double down on a shrinking window, or protect what little future they have left? Because if they wait for clarity, it might already be too late. James Harden's value might be the most uncomfortable truth the Clippers are facing right now. While the season has gone off the rails, Harden himself hasn't. He's still putting up real numbers, still controlling games, and still reminding teams around the league that he can be a difference maker in the right situation. That's exactly why his name keeps coming up in quiet deadline conversations. At 36, the timing couldn't be more critical. This isn't just about what Harden is doing now, but how quickly that value can change. One injury, one bad stretch, and the conversation flips completely. For the Clippers, this may be the last moment where cashing in actually makes sense. That urgency hits harder when you look at the bigger picture. Los Angeles doesn't have the luxury of patience. Their draft future isn't fully theirs, and every loss chips away at the illusion that this core still has time. Holding on to Harden while hoping things magically turn around could end up being the most expensive mistake of all. What makes it even more complicated is Harden's role. Not long ago, reports claimed he had stepped up as the emotional and vocal leader of the team. Now, rumors suggest front offices expect his situation to be reevaluated if the slide continues. That kind of shift doesn't happen unless people inside the league see something coming. The most realistic outcome might also be the most uncomfortable one. The Clippers do nothing. Despite how bad this season has looked, there's still a belief inside the organization that they can salvage something and sneak into the play-in. That hope, thin as it is, may be enough to keep them from pulling the trigger on a major move. But that belief clashes hard with what's actually happening on the floor. Injuries haven't gone away, the losses aren't flukes, and the gap they'd need to close isn't small. It's basically the same number of games they've struggled just to win all season. Holding on to James Harden under those circumstances starts to feel less like patience and more like denial. Teams around the league see it too. They know the Clippers are stuck between committing to this core and protecting what little future flexibility they have left. Standing still might feel safer, but it quietly carries the biggest risk of all. If Los Angeles keeps betting on a turnaround that never comes, Harden's value won't stay where it is now. Windows like this don't slowly close. They slam shut, and by the time the Clippers realize it, the league may have already moved on. Because sometimes the worst decision isn't trading a star, it's waiting too long to admit the season is already gone. So the Clippers are staring at a narrow window. Move Harden while he still has real value, or ride it out and hope this season suddenly looks different. Either way, the clock is ticking, and it's getting louder by the day. James Harden has been here before. When situations start to unravel, the shift is subtle at first. Leadership talks, public optimism, quiet frustration, then the noise starts. Just weeks ago, reports claimed Harden had taken over as the vocal and emotional leader of the Clippers. Now, that same season has him sitting at the center of growing trade speculation. That swing in perception isn't random. It reflects how quickly things have deteriorated in Los Angeles. Losses pile up, injuries resurface, and suddenly leadership isn't enough to stabilize anything. Around the league, people recognize this pattern, and Harden's history makes the speculation feel less far-fetched. What makes this moment different is timing. Harden is still producing, still showing flashes that convinced teams he could push them over the top. That combination, instability on one end and real value on the other, is exactly how trade conversations start quietly gaining momentum. The Clippers, meanwhile, are stuck managing optics and reality at the same time. Keeping Harden signals belief in a turnaround that hasn't materialized. Moving him signals an admission that this era might be nearing its end. Either choice reshapes the direction of the franchise. And as the deadline gets closer, that tension only grows. Because if this keeps sliding, the question won't be whether a Harden trade makes sense. It'll be who makes the first move when the breaking point finally arrives. Around the league, James Harden's name is being discussed more seriously than most fans realize. Not because teams think he's a long-term solution, but because in the right situation, he still feels like the kind of swing that can change a season. And that's all it takes for front offices to start circling. Plenty of teams are guard-hungry, and Harden's situation checks boxes others don't. His contract is big, but it's manageable. His production is still there. And compared to chasing bigger, riskier stars, Harden represents a shorter, clearer gamble. That's why his market feels more real than people expect. What's fueling that interest is the state of the Clippers themselves. Los Angeles looks stuck between chasing a fading play-in dream and protecting a future they don't fully control. Teams around the league can see that pressure building, and they know it often forces uncomfortable decisions. Harden's history only adds to the speculation.